Hey, so just wanted to say a quick disclaimer. We are not theologians, pastors, religious teachers, or in any way an authority of the Bible. We're just average Christians having a great time talking about the Bible with our friends. Potluck was created to encourage food for thought and to help open up a conversation about major and minor topics from the Bible. We strongly encourage all audience members to conduct their own research, as statements presented are largely opinion-based as well as biblically backed. Us here at Potluck wish you have a great day, and please, come enjoy the potluck.
Welcome to Potluck, the podcast where we bring our different dishes of conversation and perspective to the table. This podcast focuses on a casual conversation about God through personal stories and experiences. We hope that these conversations help in understanding the Bible, God, and each other. We're glad that you've decided to join our conversation. Okay, so hello and welcome back to the Potluck podcast. So I have a question for everyone today. What is your favorite soda? Let's start off with Briley.
Hello. So my favorite soda would probably be knee-high peach, which is not very heard of, but
I've never heard of that.
it's really good. It's my favorite.
My name's Darcy, and my favorite soda is very heard of, and it's root beer, and it's very, very good.
Hi, I'm Delano, and my favorite soda is cream soda.
Hi, my name is Caitlin, and my favorite soda is orange soda.
Oh my goodness, Caitlin, same. My name is Danila,
Hey.
and my favorite soda is Crush Orange, specifically Crush. Sometimes Fanta is okay.
Yeah, I was about to say, any specifics, Caitlin?
I think I'm gonna have to go with Fanta, but I don't really differentiate. Like orange soda is orange soda for me.
Okay,
Fair.
I appreciate that. Okay, Caitlin, what are we talking about today?
So we couldn't decide on a single topic, so we're gonna do popcorn topics, and Briley came up with a really cool name, which was Briley, you want to say it?
Oh, right. So it's popcorn night, and we're gonna have popcorn.
All right. So I'm gonna just
Short.
we have 10 topics or just things that we just stood out to us that was interesting. So I'm just gonna do a random number generator and just pick the next one. Okay. So it's number 4. So friendship.
Like Christian friendship or friendship in general? What do you guys think about differentiating, like the differentiation?
I feel like anything.
So here's
Like,
an idea.
should there be a difference?
Yeah.
Like a difference in that?
I don't think so. I
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Here's an idea. What about God as your friend? That's something that
Ooh.
my grandmother has always told me. God is my best friend. God should be your best friend. Jesus should be your best friend. But what does that mean? Some people feel like it's hard to have Jesus as your best friend because he's not a physical person, right? And some people believe it should be like a relationship that's different than a friendship, But I don't know. Personally, I feel that in my relationship with God and Jesus, that I should be able to interact with him like a friend, like a close friend, like my best friend.
I feel like it's hard for me sometimes to do that. Like I want to, but it's kind of like having a parent as a best friend.
Mhm.
You're supposed to respect God as God, but you can't have a parent. Well, I mean you can, but it's weird dynamic to have your parent as your best friend, because there's a level of respect that needs to happen, and it's hard to like, I mean, you respect your friends, but
That's what I was about to say. You respect
Yeah.
friends, right? So I think that's
but
all
it's
the
a different
respect
type of
matters.
respect.
Yeah.
Okay, but like in your head, like what if you think, okay, so in my head, I think of Jesus as like my friend, and that's like who I pray to, and then God, like, and he intercedes to God. So maybe in my head, I see it as like, I mean, they're all the same person, but like Jesus is my friend, and I do feel more of a respect to God. Does that make sense?
Do you feel like a parental respect to God, like the Father, and like a like a friendship respect for Jesus?
I think so. I don't know. I mean, like they're one and the same, but they're also
Mhm.
in my head different, because it's like Jesus was on earth, but he's also kind of God, but it's Jesus, I don't know. Maybe I just somewhere along the lines differentiated it.
I think it might be important to preface this with the idea of how we believe in the Trinity as Seventh-day Adventists, which can differ from other religious things.
Mhm.
Personally, I believe that God has three different beings: God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And they all interact with each other, with the world in different ways, but they all have the same goal in mind, to the point where it's almost like they're one person, They basically are. So
Mhm.
just as a preface to how we think of the Trinity as.
Yeah.
It was an interesting point, Danila, that you raised about how you don't like typically think of God as a friend. And so I was like, yeah, like wait, I remember hymns that talk about Jesus being our friend, but does the Bible actually like where in the Bible does it almost give us permission to call God our friend? And I found John 15 verses 13 through 15. He said, "Greater love has no man than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you." So I think, like, I mean, he says, "You are my friends if you do what I command." So I feel like that means, like, right here, he's talking about how he has opened the door for us to be able to become his friends. Um, he's by dying for us, he opened the path for us to be able to have a connection with him. And I definitely think I consider him like, a mentor, a parental figure, someone who's in charge, but he invites us to come into that closer relationship with him, like that closer connection where you could almost consider it a friendship.
Mhm. That's a good point. I think while you're reading that, I feel like I've viewed God in that way, because I definitely view him in a way of he's there for me. I can count on him, whether it be like parental or friend. But I think when I hear most people talking about Jesus being my friend, it's more of a relaxed idea rather than, oh, I'm doing what God says and therefore I'm like what that verse was saying. Like a lot of people don't do what God says, and it's like, well, it's okay, because like all he cares about is that he loves me, and no matter what I do, I'll always be good because he's my buddy.
We're besties, so it's
We're
okay.
besties, so
I think but I think they can easily say that, but not actually have a friendship with him, because I think if you actually have a friendship with God, like you actually have a relationship with him, then it's not only just about him loving you, it's about you loving him. And the Bible says, like, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments.
Yeah.
So I think if you genuinely have a friend, like loving relationship with God, a friendship with God, then you will do what he says. But
I
it's
110% agree with you. I think I have more of a problem with the phrase Jesus is my friend than actually believing that Jesus is my friend. Because it's the stereotypes that comes with that. But
Like
yeah, Jesus is my friend.
Yeah,
I agree.
that's buddies. LOL.
You mentioned like the stereotypes that like that come along with saying like Jesus is my friend, and I think like certain people saying that and being like, oh yeah, Jesus is my friend, but then they act a certain way that wouldn't show Jesus to them and can be seen as hurtful and not, quote unquote, not Christian or whatever. And I think people can see Jesus as that, like, oh well, if Jesus is their friend, then like, I don't know, he would be okay with that, or I don't want to be friends with someone who's okay with someone behaving that way. And I think that can be another reason some people don't like using like, oh, Jesus is my friend.
Yeah. You got to be careful about how you represent him.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, are you ready for the next topic, or do we have any other thoughts?
Pop the popcorn.
Give it to us.
All right. 5. Okay, this is real random. So number 5 is disobedience.
Oh, I feel like that was super connected, actually.
Yeah, it was kind of. Thanks, God.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I was a kid, my mom would always have me rewrite the commandment that says honor your mother and father, blah, blah, blah. And she would always say that, like, if you don't honor your mother and father, then you, like, the verse says, like, you will not have the land that God has promised you. And that's the first thing that came up when it said disobedience for me. I was just thinking about that because it was something that was held over my head like my whole life. It's like, well, if I don't do this, then I won't go to heaven. And it's like, well, you didn't put your dishes away, you're not going to go to heaven. And I'm just like, I feel like a lot of people grow up with a misconception of what disobedience in God's eyes really is. I feel like there's a difference between stumbling and making a mistake or making the wrong decision, even though you know what the right decision is, versus blatantly turning your back on Christ.
Yeah.
Saying that I know the truth and I don't care what you have to say, I'm going to do things my way, versus, oh, I really know the truth, but I'm struggling between these two things, and I'm going to not do this even though I know it's wrong, or I'm going to do this even though I know it's wrong, and that's just how it is. And then later on being like David and just like being, oh God, throwing ashes on your head. What have I done? I don't know. That took me a long time to recognize, like in my personal walk with God, that there's a difference. So that's what I thought of.
Yeah.
My dad is doing a series on Facebook right now, just like, you know, for the people who follow him. It's basically sharing his journey with coming to understand the law and grace. And so I've been reading along with it. It's really good, actually. Like he's very talented at putting thoughts to words in a way that I aspire to. But I've really gotten a lot out of it. And one thing he talked about, or one like object lesson he used, was comparing like a really healthy relationship between a child and their parent. There's nothing that child could do that would make them not the child of their parent or not loved by their parent, because that's who they are. There's nothing we can do that will make us not God's child or not loved by God, because we are God's children, and again, that's who we are. So like whatever we do, whatever sin we commit, no, like it doesn't matter what sin we commit, like we are still a child of God. And I think obedience comes in and is important, because that's our conscious decision that we want to pursue that relationship with God. It's not necessarily about like, oh, you sinned, so that's another mark on your record, like, and you get this many marks and you go to hell or whatever. No, it's you sin, and that's you. I mean, you're messing up, and you can come back to God easily after that. But I think each time you deliberately sin, you deliberately decide that you don't want to follow God in this instance, that's you, that's your own choice, making a little bit of a path away from God. And in the end, if you have chosen that you don't want to follow God, then you're not going to want to live with him for eternity. And so he's not going to take you with him, and that's going to be an act of mercy. And if you have made choices, if you have obeyed God, then you've gotten to know him, and you've gotten closer to him, and you are going to want to spend time with him in eternity. So yeah, it's hard to put to words, and it's hard to sum up kind of that whole concept, I guess. But it's weird that for so much of my life, in my mind, it was all about like following the law, like obeying the law. But it's taken, I don't know, little steps here and there to get me to realize how much it is actually about relationship, and the little choices that you make that can either grow that relationship or not grow that relationship. So yeah, obedience is about relationship with God, and not about like getting marks on your record. That was like a long way to get to that end point, but that end point is pretty much what I wanted to say.
No, I love that.
Yeah, I pretty much agree completely.
I feel like sometimes it's not really connected with disobedience, but like you guys were, Daniela, you were saying like if like your mom or your parents held over your head like, oh, if you don't do the dishes, that's not honoring your parents and you're not going to go to heaven. Or like Darcy was saying how it's not really like marks on your record. I feel like a lot of the times heaven is used as like almost like a threat, like if you don't do what I say, then you're not, or like if you don't follow God's law to the letter, then you're not gonna go to the best place imaginable. And that's like obviously really scary.
Yeah, we Seventh-day Adventists don't believe in like eternal hell, but we do believe in heaven, and we're like, oh, do you want to go to heaven? Well, you better obey.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate. It's not about going to heaven, it's about knowing God. Yeah. And it's unfortunate how much that the idea of heaven is pushed, because it's like behavioral conditioning, you know, you do this thing, you get rewarded, and if you don't do it, you get punished. But this is not in the same way, you know. You may get rewarded, but that's not why you need to do it.
One thing with like heaven being held over your head, I thought about was when I was at our little Adventist Christian college. One of my professors said that he sent out a survey to students on campus asking them, if Jesus came today, do you think you would go to heaven? And there was a yes, no, and a maybe. And he said that the majority, like 70%, approximately, I don't really remember the stats, but I think it was like 70% of students either said no or maybe. And he was just appalled by that idea, because he was like, all of the students should know that they're loved, and even if they make mistakes, God still loves them. I think he was more upset about the maybe than the no's, because there shouldn't ever be a maybe. It's either yes or no. And it's more of a yes because you've committed yourself to Christ, most likely, being at a Christian college. And so that's one thing I thought of when you were saying like people holding heaven over their heads. I think that sometimes people hold heaven over their own heads, even if it's not pushed in by the church or anything. I think people think to themselves about it and are like, I'm not good enough and I'm not going to make it to heaven, without anyone saying, oh, you're not going to make it to heaven because you're doing this and this and this. I think it's our natural self, like human self, to think that we're not good enough. And I feel like a lot of Christians deal with not feeling good enough for God, especially if you have like a good relationship with God and you know, like, or not, maybe not a good relationship, but especially when you know how great God is, it's hard to feel like you are worthy enough.
I experienced that fear a lot as a kid. I remember asking my parents a lot of times, "Do you think I'll go to heaven?"
Aww.
Yeah, and it was like, why did I think that so much? Why did I worry about that a lot? But it's taken a long time to get past that. So
honestly, for my own life, I've kind of decided that I want to just take heaven out of the equation in like entirely.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not entirely, because it is like a hope thing for sure, like to know that there is a life after this, that we are going to be able to be with God. But like mostly I want to take heaven out of the equation because I don't want heaven to be, first of all, a motivating factor for wanting to have a relationship with God, because that doesn't work. That's not going to get you a relationship with God. And second of all, I don't want it to be, like Caitlin mentioned, a threat. Like, I don't want it to be me thinking about, oh man, like the world is going to end sometime. Am I going to make it to heaven? Like, am I going to be able to get in, or am I not going to be good enough? And then also thinking about how I want to raise my kids. Like, I'm sure my parents didn't mean to raise me with like heaven as a threat. I'm sure Sabbath school leaders, well, most of them hopefully didn't mean to like make heaven seem like a threat to kids. But anyways, I'm thinking about how I want to like teach my own kids about it, and like how I want to frame heaven to them, because I want to do my best as a parent to not make heaven this thing that's like an exclusive event for people that are qualified. I just want to take that completely out of their minds as a possibility.
Honestly, we've like totally switched this conversation to heaven, but I'm kind of loving it, because also another thing is that what I really appreciate about like my beliefs and like what correlates with our church is that we don't believe that heaven is right when you die. Like, we believe we're resting until God comes and then we all go to heaven. And I feel like that concept helped me feel less worried about heaven, because I don't want to disappoint my family that's up there, especially if the minute I die, I don't show up there. It's like, it makes heaven even more scarier, and heaven shouldn't be scary concept, but I feel like it kind of has become that. And I agree with you, Darcy. I think for my own personal relationship with God, I've kind of had to take heaven out of the equation a little bit, of just not even thinking about it as a thing. Like, I know that that is what's going to happen, and I'm full belief of that, complete believer of that. But I think for me to not get competitive with my faith, or like measure myself up to anyone else or even people in the Bible, I think I have to just not think about that concept of it. Just keep up my relationship with God, keep trying to find out as much as I can about God, just kind of keep moving forward, rather than just like, oh, should I do this because I'm going to heaven or not type thing. I feel like I got to a point where I was making every decision I had on whether or not this would make me get to heaven, like subconsciously, like, so
it's like learning to live in the moment, which is, I think, is one of the healthier things to do
Yeah.
in order that you can actually like completely function healthily and avoid a lot of stress, is just live in the moment, because you can't fix what's done in the past and you can't know what's going to happen in the future. So the only thing that's truly ever happening is right now. So
Caitlin, did you want to say something?
Two things. One, what Delano just said reminded me of that Bible verse that of Jesus when he was like, I think it's in Matthew. It was like, don't worry about your lives or like what's going to happen tomorrow. You can't add a hair to your head by worrying about it. So why should you? And I think that that's like really important to remember, like in today's world when there's so much to worry about. Not that there wasn't a lot to worry about in the olden times or whatever, but yeah. And also, I was gonna say, do you think that you've like the idea of like taking heaven out of the equation, like you've stopped trying to get to heaven and started trying to get closer to God and like started looking at it like that instead of like heaven as a like transactional kind of relationship almost, like if you're good enough you'll get in.
yeah,
Absolutely. For me, how about you, Darcy?
Yeah, definitely. I think about like the whole get saved message. And part of me hates it because I think it almost always comes across and is often intended as getting saved like physically. Like, do you want to die with the earth or do you want to get saved and go to heaven? And that's like kind of the message that is so closely and unfortunately associated with the Christian faith, because that's what Christians have pushed for so long. But that's not what getting saved is about. Like, Jesus died to save us, yes, but Jesus died to save us from our sins so that we would be free to come back into a relationship with him. Like, that's what this whole thing is about. It's about a relationship with God, and we lost that when we started saying it was about getting physically saved. And I just think that's so unfortunate. That's like one of the biggest mistakes of the Christian faith. We just need to wrench that out of there.
yeah.
Something something I heard growing up, I can't even remember really where I heard it, but like I was told that the more good things we do, the more gems we'll have in our crown in heaven. And like so like the really good people would have like really pretty like bedazzled jeweled crowns in heaven, because like every good thing they did showed up in their crown. But I remember, I think my grandma told me that, and I remember thinking like, well, like as a kid, like, oh well, like I want a pretty crown. So somewhere along the way I kind of associated like, oh, I need to do good things so I can have more reward in heaven, instead of the focus being on relationship centered and Christ centered, instead of like you've both been, or everyone's been saying, in goal heaven, not God and relationship.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I've heard like, I think I've heard that people who you bring to Jesus, you'll get like a star in your crown or something. I don't know where that originated from. I literally just looked it up to just double check to see if it was in the Bible. And on my first Google search, at least, I did not see anything about that.
Yeah, the stars thing. I think that might be, I might have just associated stars with gems, but I've definitely heard the stars.
Yeah. Bling in your crown.
I have I've never heard of that.
Oh, really?
Ever.
Really?
Yeah. So this is really, I've never heard of that.
Removing the stigma of I am shooting for heaven rather than a relationship with God, and thinking of it as like, am I worried about heaven now? Like, is that something I'm even still thinking about, you know? while I'm not letting it be a worry to me, it's knowing like what gets you heaven, and that is a relationship with God, right? That's it. That's the only thing that will give you heaven. So knowing the answer that if I'm forging a relationship with God, I will end up in heaven is also kind of a nice thing to do, to understand, at least, because it's like knowing the answer to that question: are you going to go to heaven? Getting out of that maybe state of, am I good enough? Is my relationship good enough? The fact that you're striving to have a relationship with God in the first place is good enough. So you have to be assured that in your consistent building of a relationship with Christ, that you are assured.
I've heard somewhere before that if you're worried about it, you're already on the right track, but not worried in the sense, because we shouldn't worry, but if you're wanting more, wanting's a better word. If you're wanting a relationship with God, you're already set on the right track.
Yeah. And I think at that point, then wanting to get better and actually getting better is not about a stairway to heaven. Again, it's just about like living a better life and getting to know God more, which is obviously a very good thing, because God wants the best for you.
If every single person could live like Jesus did on earth, it would be heaven on earth. So why not try to bring a little bit of heaven here while by living like Jesus did?
By obeying God.
Yeah.
So are we ready for our next word?
Yeah.
I should do like a popcorn sound for each one. Okay, so this next one went to 6. I feel like I should. Like it went 4, 5,
I think
6.
something is wrong with that random number generator.
It was working before.
Oh wow.
It happens to. I'm gonna do it again.
Okay.
Okay, it said 4, then it said 5. Okay, 2. Oh, this is Delano's topic. Angels and demons.
Ooh.
So what about this, huh? What about this?
What about this? Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, does everybody here believe? Because I know some people don't even believe in angels and demons. Do we all believe in angels and demons? Because
I do.
I do.
I do.
Okay. Danila?
I do.
We all do.
Wait, Caitlin.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
This
Can
is
you hear me?
back to the question: believing in life beyond humanity.
So the supernatural.
Yes, the supernatural and miracles and all sorts of things. The great controversy.
Wait, did we just switch topics?
No, I don't think so. Man, if I did, I wasn't trying to. But okay, focus back on angels and demons, right? What is what do you guys think about that?
Delano, what do you think about it? Give us something to go on.
I'm trying to think of something. I'm trying to think of something.
Topic.
What do you guys think? Sorry.
Go ahead.
I know we've all seen like the biblically accurate angels meme. What do you guys think about that?
Terrifying.
Like, do you think angels actually look like, or do you think that it's like only a specific type of angel? Because I've heard it argued that some angels look like that and other angels don't look like that.
I know that angels don't look like what they show in movies because they look like humans, and only humans are in the making of God. So they literally just made humans with wings.
Yeah.
I think God is a little bit more creative than that.
I definitely I definitely think the things of God and the supernatural is just so far beyond what we could ever imagine. And while the biblically accurate angel meme is very interesting and probably a lot closer to what an angel actually looks like than the human angels, I still think it's probably far off from reality.
Ooh, controversy.
But I mean, if it was even close, then that would be pretty amazing.
I mean, think about like we only have what how many dimensions? We're just in a 3-dimension fourth. Duh. Wait, fourth or I don't know. Whatever. Yeah.
3 planes of existence right now.
Yeah. So in our dimension, we only have like certain things that are within our dimension, but like God and like the supernatural is not confined in those boundaries. So that's why I think like angels, God himself, heaven, whatever we can imagine is probably going to be vastly beyond what it's possible for us to imagine at this point.
A good way to think about this is, right, look at if you take a piece of paper and draw like a stick person on it, right? They can only go back and forth, right? And we could turn it around and have the whole plane of existence, right? And so essentially humans are functioning like the stick man, while God and angels and demons are functioning outside of that, where they have much more
Okay. That's good. We need some more context here.
Yeah.
He was getting all philosophical.
No, that's a good analogy.
It was honestly a great analogy. But me, Danila, and Briley all started like smiling at the same time.
Yeah.
And then we just started laughing. And then Danila all of a sudden flipped her screen off and she's probably dying in the next room. Delano, we just loved seeing you practice your teaching abilities. Delano,
yeah, that's really what I was thinking. I was like, look at the little Professor Delano. I'm gonna.
I wrote about this when I was like 14. I wrote a little thing about this. I'm not an expert. I was just thinking hard. I wrote about this.
Yeah, he used to read us like
very interesting
quantum theory books before bed, or me and our sister. Like, what was that book you used to read us, Delano?
Quadrivial.
Quadrivial, yeah.
Arts.
No,
Yeah,
that
so
was
he's interested.
That was good
really
analogy though. Sorry, it was just your voice changed, your whole demeanor changed, and I was dying. Okay.
He like switched into teacher mode so quickly.
Yeah. He was like, "So kids, so."
Okay. Also, just in case anybody else was wondering, we do live in 3 dimensions.
There's also
yeah.
like so. In terms of dimensions, they count like time and space as also dimensions. So there's like planes of existence and also like time and space as dimensions itself. So those things. So like if you think of God as something that lives outside of time, right? So it's already outside of this dimension of time and space. But anyways, it's all very convoluted and heady and things we don't necessarily know. So we can just imagine.
Yeah. But one thing about the meme angel, like I liked seeing that depiction of angels, even if it's not real or like we wouldn't be able to ever grasp it. I like seeing it because for the first time in my life, I realized why they always had to say, "Do not be afraid."
Yeah.
So I was like, the whole time, like, that guy just looks like an average Joe with wings. Like, there's nothing scary about that. Like, the wings were really just like, oh my God, like terrified that every single person they have to be like, don't be afraid of me, I got wings. Like, doesn't seem like that.
Yeah, or like they're glowing and you're like, I mean, if somebody appeared to me and they were glowing and had wings, that would be freaky, but like, I wouldn't like lose my mind. But if like a multi-ringed, like a ring rings with eyes on them and like wings, I would have a mental breakdown.
Yeah,
I would think I've gone crazy. I'm like, this is it. I'm certifiable now. Like,
yeah, if they look
like who drugged me?
Yeah.
Yeah, if they look like how movies depict angels, I feel like they would come down and say, okay, yeah, I'm awesome. Instead of saying,
hey, what's up, man? What's up?
Do not be afraid. It's like, yes, I know, I look really cool. But that's not the
yes,
point.
I know, I'm trying.
You're about to have a baby in the name of Jesus.
But also, like, there's other types of angels. Like, it describes in the Bible, like the like there's like several different types. There's ones like that look like animals, right? Like
is cherubim? Is that like a
True.
thing? What did you say, Caitlin?
That's true. I remember reading about that. Like, I don't know if it's cherubim, but I remember in like reading a description, and it had like 4 faces, and one was the face of like a man, and one was the face of like an animal, like different types of animals.
Yeah. You know who has a lot of good information that I remember? I think the Bible Project. I think I watched for a Sabbath school class once that they did like a whole presentation on like the different types of angels and stuff, and it was really like they had videos and like commentary that was really interesting.
Yeah, I think I watched those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So really
Let's look that
skirting
up.
around the demons topic though.
No.
Yeah, true.
It's a little scary.
So,
Mhm.
I think a good question to ask is, what is a demon? And from my understanding, it's a fallen angel, right? So they were once angels that just went to the wrong side. But there's also, in the context of like reading what happened in Genesis, right? So there was a war in heaven between Lucifer and his angels and God and their angels that went on for who knows how long. So who knows how much
That's in Genesis?
Yeah.
Is it in Genesis or is it in Revelation?
I think it's in Revelation. I don't think it's in Genesis. It's not. It's definitely not in Genesis.
Yeah, it's not in
No.
Genesis.
Also, I don't think it was a long war. I don't think it was a long war. I think it was just like, maybe this is just how I thought of it, but I've heard a pastor say like they were like, Satan was like, no, God, and God was like, okay, bye, and like they just all I don't know. That's
Okay,
how I heard
bye.
it. I think God's more powerful than it being a long war.
Yeah, but I mean, there's also God let the angels choose. So
Maybe it
Yeah,
was just
but
a
I think
political war.
that's kind of
Like,
what I was thinking.
That's what I've
Like,
always thought.
Yeah.
I think it was just like was it 1/3 of the angels? They were just like, yeah, kind of this guy kind of seems interesting, and then God was like, okay, well, this is like your punishment. And
But like, also, if it was a physical war, imagine those biblically correct angels
I
fighting.
know.
With
right, that's
That's
wild.
terrifying
Like,
and epic at the same time.
Mhm.
what do you think? Because that makes me wonder. This is just going into like imagination or whatever, but like they don't have, obviously they're in another level, but they don't have hands. So how would they, like, what kind of weapon would they use?
Well,
Maybe
didn't
energy.
Jesus or God send someone to guard they might have some sort of hands, because he sent them to guard the to guard the Garden of Eden with like a sword.
Maybe
Mhm.
they just kind of attach it to their like hip, like Veggie Tales. Magically levitate it.
They just
Well,
hold
maybe
their
they got
mind.
telepathy. Like maybe they just
Maybe
use
they
a
have
brain.
well, I mean, angels are
telekinesis.
capable.
Yeah, it's telekinesis.
Oh,
not
did I say
telepathy.
telepathy? I meant telekinesis.
I was
I mean,
fighting
they
everything within me to
I'm so
correct me.
sorry.
Angels can like, I mean, they can change form, so maybe they
Yeah.
changed into a human form for that.
At least the form.
They can
Yeah.
change forms.
Yeah,
I
I
thought
mean,
so.
yeah,
They can
angels like
shapeshift?
appear like as humans.
Like
on
it'll
Earth.
say somewhere in the Bible, it'll be like they were
Like-
angels, but they looked like humans.
Yeah, like
Sodom and
God,
Gomorrah.
when Jesus, when
Yes.
when God came down to visit Abraham, it was
Mhm.
God or at least Jesus or something, and then 2 like men with him that were angels, and then those men walked into Sodom and Gomorrah to get Lot and his family out.
But I
Yeah,
just
that's
thought,
actually the
like,
exact scenario.
oh yeah, I guess so. But like, wait, that opens my mind to so many different questions, because that's so true. Because yeah, the guys visited Abraham, and then he like gave them food, and then he found out that they're angels. But okay, so then this opens so many thoughts to my process. So I believe like demons are what most people think of, like ghosts and stuff. So that makes a lot more
Mhm.
sense how they can shapeshift into people.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah. They just
maybe,
on the like form
yeah, maybe
that
they're
was
not
that
like,
died.
maybe they're not like transparent things that we think of like when we think of ghosts. Maybe they're actual like just shapeshifted. Whoa, this is wild.
There's a yeah, well, angels, demons, higher beings other than this plane of existence aren't bound by a physical form, but they can interact with that physical world. You know what I'm saying? At least bound by a physical form in this same plane of existence. I watched a video about like different dimensional interactions, like what a 4D object would look like in a 3D space or something like that. I'll try to find a video just so I can show it to you, but basically something that exists in a fourth dimension being viewed by a three-dimensional uh, being, it would appear that the object is phasing in and out of existence, right?
Mm.
In ways that shouldn't be able
Mm.
to. Like something could be phasing through a wall, basically. Like this is a wall here. It comes in through that and then it goes out. But that only happens because just like this piece of paper, right? I'm behind it right now, but if something that is existing only on this one side, it does not know that there's a behind of it. But I can move all the way around it and in front of it and behind it, underneath it. It's that same idea. They can interact with our whole world in a different way than we could ever imagine.
Mhm.
That's like when Jesus came back from the dead and the disciples were in the room together and like he went, it doesn't specifically like focus on it, but I think it says like the door was either locked or closed and Jesus like appeared in the room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because weren't they hiding after Jesus' death? Because
Yeah.
they were like, we're gonna die. Maybe like what everything we thought is we're not sure. And then Jesus was like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
That's wild.
So we're sort of running out of time, but let's try to do one more topic so that we don't end on angels and demons. Okay, so let me shuffle 8. Fairness.
This was the one you wanted to put down, right?
Was
What
it?
is this one?
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was thinking, I guess I was thinking how a lot of people don't see Christianity as fair. Like some people kind of see it as we give all this devotion to this being and he doesn't really do much for us in return. I've heard that a few times to me. And just overall, people in the faith sometimes ask questions like, why does bad things happen to good people? Why did this person in my life die? This isn't fair. And I think a lot of Christians battle with God on what is right or wrong for him to do. So that's what I was thinking when I thought fairness.
I get people struggle with that a lot, like God being a just or fair God. But I also, the way I resolve that in my head is by thinking like, he knows so much more than we do, and he knows how things will end up in the way that would be beneficial. And like it's like hard to explain, like he knows what's best. So even if we don't think it's fair or just now, like in the end it'll all be right.
Yeah, I think a better way to put it than rather than he knows what's best is he can make use of every situation for the best.
Yeah.
Because knowing what's best and knowing what's gonna happen and having it always end up as it's always gonna work out as the best almost feels like we have no choice. but we do have a choice, and our it's up to us to decide what we're going to do. But God knows everything, and whatever choice we make, his plans will be seen fit to make the best outcome no matter what happens. So
Yeah, and that also definitely helps with like coming to terms with the whole concept of God's will, because a lot of people, like, I mean, infamously, people will say at Christian funerals, like, oh, I guess this was God's will, even if we can't see it. Well, no, like, it's not God's will for people to die. Like, he doesn't want people to die. He doesn't want people to be taken out of other people's lives. But it has to happen because that's just the nature of the world we live in. And he can take that brokenness and create something beautiful out of it.
Yeah, that was said much better than that's basically what I was trying to say, but I couldn't find the right words. I think it also is like when something bad happens and people are like, oh, it's God's, like you guys were saying, oh, like it's God's will, or like everything happens for a reason, there's always a purpose to things, which I really struggled with for a long time, because I was like, but there's literally so many bad things that are happening in the world, and like when something unfair happens, is that God's will? Like, is that him? Like, I just have to wait and see what's happen. And like it got like struggling with the idea, if something unfair happens, almost like God's not that he's causing it. Sorry, this is a really roundabout way of saying it, but like struggling with the idea that God is fair and just, and he doesn't cause bad things to happen. But when bad things happen, and like, the idea of like, if something bad happens and you don't do anything about it, then you're also to blame. Struggling kind of with that idea of like, okay, well, if God knew that this was going to happen and something bad was going to happen to me, or anybody, and he didn't stop it, then he might not have caused it. But like, why didn't he stop it? And like, I think it's in Ecclesiastes, and it's saying I'll have to find it, but it's like there's everything. Chance happens to everybody. Like, bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people, and that's just a thing that happens in the world, and it's not great, but it happens. And I think, but like you guys were saying, like when bad things happen, not that God caused them to do it or he wasn't doing anything about them, but when they happen, he turns them into good things. Like, I know the plans I have for you, the graduation verse, plans to prosper you and not harm you.
Yeah. So I think that's time for application. So application is something like that we want to like add to each of our podcasts. So this basically is just the segment of just kind of closing out of how we have found this to be helpful to us in our everyday life, or how this applies to our life, or how this has changed our opinions. Basically a wrap up, but like reflection on our life. So application.
I think everything that has been said serves as a good motive to continue deepening my own relationship with God, and just continue just living in the moment and experiencing life, because that's the only thing I can do. So, and that's why I was put here.
Yeah, I'm just going to bring up the whole taking heaven out of the equation thing again, because I think that's a good thing for people to remember. Make your Christianity about your relationship with God, and make that all it's about.
Mhm.
I think I would have to say that that's the application that I take away from it too, like not making it stop making it about getting to heaven and start making it about getting closer to God. And in relation to that, you will get to heaven because you have a relationship with God.
I think the biggest application for me is being okay with saying Jesus is my friend. Yeah, he's my friend, he's my buddy, but I respect him. Okay, so thanks for listening to Potluck the podcast. I'm Danila.
I'm Briley.
I'm Darcy.
I'm Delano.
And I'm Caitlin.
All right, bye.
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 Good night.